And the media and politicians are deeply dependent upon one another. And the idea that it is only politicians who exercise power, I think, is completely wrong. The media are very, very powerful actors and institutions in their own right in our society. Because the BBC is a broadcaster, and thus, of course, it's a rival to Murdoch's own broadcasting operations. Murdoch newspapers will take any and every opportunity to smear the BBC, and the smears against Kelly emanating from the Murdoch press were all part of that. We started off in the popular press and then moved over to the broadsheet press, and I think that the consequences of Murdoch acquiring those newspapers and then very, very significantly changing them, those consequences were absolutely enormous, because basically he forced other newspapers to compete with him on his terrain. I mean, some people would say, he dragged them down into the gutter. A relationship of mutual back-scratching. I think that what happened during, from about the mid-90s onwards is that Murdoch realised that big changes were afoot in the Labour Party. The Labour Party was modernising itself and making itself more electable in the new Labour strategy. The idea was we mustn't, alienate the right-wing press, and as far as possible we must try to be friendly with papers like The Sun and The Mail. So overtures were being made in that direction. At the same time, Murdoch was making overtures towards Blair, because he could see that Blair might well become Prime Minister, and that Murdoch wanted to see that Blair would have policies which suited him. Most British newspapers have always been very, very strong on law and order. They've always run stories about, oh my God, law and order is breaking down. If you go through the post-war period, you can look at stories about teddy boys, stories about mods and rockers, stories about punks. The end of the world as we know it is just about to happen. And over and over and over again, newspapers have helped to stoke up moral panics. So certainly when New Labour was in the making, it wanted to appear to be much tougher on law and order. What happened to the guys who were terrorised, that's the right word in my view, at Forest Gate, is that they were the victims in the press of what you could only call a McCarthyite smear campaign. The most extraordinary kind of thuggish and brutal behaviour by the police, a complete and utter overreaction to the intelligence. And it was very obvious very, very quickly that they'd fucked it up, basically. And very, very quickly, therefore, the smear stories began to appear. Here were these people who'd had their house absolutely, smashed to smithereens, no question about it. So then the stories get going about how disgraceful it is, that public money is being used to put these people up in hotels. Well, it was public money, but the money was being paid for by the Metropolitan Police. So again, presumably the police were leaking to the newspapers how much they were giving. Any idea of the press being a fourth estate, or any idea of the press being some kind of check on the powerful in our society goes completely out of the window if you read this stuff. That the press, for the most part, is not a check on the establishment. It is the establishment. It's a very, very powerful part of the establishment. No one has big banner headlines to say, this person who we all thought was guilty has now been realised to be innocent after all. It's all done in complete silence.